It's time for another round of your favorite Mets stories with your favorite Mets. I'm your host, Mike Janela, and today we got Steve Trachsel from out in sunny California. Steve, what's happening, man?
Much, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And yeah, we're doing this coast to coast. And I mean, I remember like it was yesterday when you were calling, New York here home and the years you spent as a Met. So thanks for joining us from California. Your life, I mean, it seems pretty busy now. You got a newborn baby, right? And you got two teenagers. That's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, we got one in college. Another one, we're looking at colleges. So looking at Pace University, NYU. It's on the East Coast list. Got a 16-month-old. And spoiler alert, hopefully this didn't go up to my parents. Got another one on the way.
Hey, congratulations. That's awesome. Great news. I think we just got a scoop too. So thanks, Steve, for breaking news for us here.
The COVID baby.
Man,
Stay at home COVID baby.
You got to pass the time somehow when you're locked down. So this is happy news though. That's awesome. Congratulations. Do you know boy or girl, or are you going to wait for a surprise?
It could be another girl.
Man, that's great. Well, congratulations to you. And yeah, from the one end of the spectrum, the college age to now the fun stuff, doing it all over again. Are you having fun? Do you like being a dad to the newborns?
Yeah, it's great. It's just so completely different. Being able to be home and not traveling and playing. So there's a lot of things I missed out with my older kids, like first days of school and steps and all of that. So I feel like I'm kind of catching up a little bit with the new ones, and and being able to go with them on college visits and all of that is awesome too. So I'm getting both ends of the spectrum. It's great.
That's great. And if your parents are watching, Steve did that on his own. We didn't, try and push him in revealing that news.
It's my fault, yeah.
Sorry, that's on you. Well, congratulations and best of luck as the family keeps growing. That's awesome news. I want to talk. I mean, I know whenever someone interviews you, they're kind of contractually obligated to talk about, the slow pitching and the McGwire home run. And we'll get to that in a sec. But I want to start with your Mets career because that's why we reached back out to you. You had such a memorable stint here in New York. I mean, you had the most wins of any Mets pitcher in that first decade of the 2000s, which that's pretty cool to have on your resume, right? A whole decade. That's
it's definitely a really nice stat to have. It's better than having the most losses.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, it's actually something it's pretty cool because if you look at the guys that we had, throughout that 10 years, it's some really nice names. Obviously, a lot of Hall of Famers. So to be able to squeak out a win or two extra over those guys over at that time period is pretty cool.
What do you remember from that time? Because, yeah, there were so many amazing guys you played with, some good seasons, some bad seasons. You were there, though, kind of as a rock. When you think about your time as a Met, what's the first thing that comes to mind? How do you describe it?
It was something, when I became a free agent and signed there, it was what I was looking for. I wanted to go somewhere where there was going to be pressure to win. There was going to be, competitive teams every single year. And I wanted to be a big part of that. And, it didn't start out real strongly. That first year, I struggled the first few weeks to month. And, after going down the minor leagues for, 18, 19 days or whatever it was, and kind of getting my head straightened out a little bit, and came back and just wanted to be that model of consistency that I felt like I had been, my prior 5 or 6 years.
And that was a huge point in your career too, going down to Norfolk, and you came back and it really kind of put your career back on track for good.
Yep.
What was there something mentally, something you finally figured out that allowed you to be that kind of that anchor, that staff rock every 5 days once you came back?
Yeah, I think maybe the easiest way to describe it was New York was a little bit bigger than even I had anticipated. Obviously, I'd been there numerous times previously with other teams, but you just can't wrap your head around how much the media is on you, and the pressure, whether it be from the fans or that media or what you put on yourself. I really expected myself to come in and be really do very, very well from the very first day. And it just kind of maybe, overwhelmed me a little bit. And, going down there and clearing my head for, I think it was supposed to be 20 days and it'd be less than that. Get away from that media pressure, which, wasn't really kind of prepared for. Being in Tampa Bay the year before, in Toronto, you're looking at 2 or 3 guys maybe that you have to work with, to boom, 30 from multiple countries. was something I wasn't really kind of prepared for. And then getting off to a rough start, the pressure just kind of mounted, and I, I'm my own biggest critic and always have been. So I think maybe I kind of piled on myself a little too much, but it all worked out, being able to go down there and clear my head.
And you started in Chicago, which is not a small town either. You spent a lot of years there, but there's something about New York that's just that next level.
It's a whole nother animal. It's just a bigger, meaner, tougher monster. And, it's great when things are going well. And when things are not going well, it's even worse. It can be pretty tough. But, you learn a lot about yourself as a player and as a person going through all that and coming out the other side.
And then it ends up being some good times by the end. I mean, your last year here, team makes the playoffs. They had just come off that pennant once you got here, but some tough years up and down in between. But the roster changed so much too. From the time you got there, it was kind of the end of that, Piazza, Fonzie, Ventura era. And then by the time you ended here in Flushing, it was the David Wright, Jose Reyes, Beltran, like that next generation. And you were that bridge in between. What do you remember from the clubhouse, it changing? Did you change, or were you kind of the same throughout? How was the beginning of your Mets time different from the end?
I think, definitely coming in, it was definitely a more veteran group, like you talk about with Piazza and Robin Ventura, Todd Zeal, and then, you always have a lot of turnover with teams that you're on. And, but with New York, being with Jose Reyes and David Wright, it was coming from within. So these were guys we were hearing about. Even my first year, we knew these guys were coming. And so it was really exciting to see them come up and then to blossom and then in turn into leaders themselves, by the time I was done.
So many characters. I mean, we just name dropped a bunch of guys, right? You did, I did. And you were a veteran by that point, so I'm sure you weren't that rookie that was tentative. You would say what was on your mind in the clubhouse or in the dugout or out in the pen. You got to have some good stories that you can share with us, some behind the scenes stuff. PG, keep it, not too crazy, but there's got to be some funny memories you have of some of the guys that you share time with here, right?
Yeah, no, we had some good times. It was nice having travel back then. Being able to kind of bring your own stuff on the plane. So I got into bringing wine on the plane and kind of designated myself as the team sommelier. And it was nice. I mean, you even used to be able to smoke on the planes. I mean, can you imagine that? You can't even do all that now.
Now you're aging yourself. Now you're dating yourself.
Right? So, well, I just turned 50, so it's pretty simple.
Happy belated.
Thank you. But so I would bring my own wine on the plane, and we would get guys and just pop corks. And it was just kind of a way to bring guys back. So Mike Cousin was a big red wine guy. Tommy Glavine was a little bit. So it would be a nice way to get guys in the back of the plane, open a couple bottles to share, and just kind of get the conversations going and to kind of help bring that inclusiveness together without, doing it in the clubhouse or having to do it and find ways to do it at restaurants. So it was nice to be able to do that on the planes.
What's the kind of stuff you talk about? And we're going to get to wine later. Don't worry. I got a whole section of questions ready for you on that. When you're with Mike Piazza on the back of the team plane, you guys are sipping, a little Sauvignon or a Pinot Noir or something. Are you talking about the game? Or are you talking about life? What are some of the stories you guys?
A little bit of everything, really. Yeah. So Mike was always big about talking about Italy, going to Italy, music. Mike and I talked a lot about music. He was more into heavy metal. I was more into like classic rock and that type of stuff. Tommy would talk about golf. Baseball was always in there. Talk about plans that we were going to do during the off season. Turk, the first couple of years, always be hunting. All the stuff he was going to go out and shoot, and it was just really all over the place. It was just nice to finally get guys, away from the guys who weren't playing cards. Those guys always did their thing, and they're pretty concentrated on the card games. But it's nice to get the guys that weren't involved in that involved.
And then Turk, he give you a sneak preview of what would end up on his necklace the next season, probably, right? Is what he would talk about.
So I was in the minor league system with Chicago with Turk. So we were in 1993. So I actually went on a couple hunting trips with him in spring trainings and stuff. And he is by far still the best shot, whether it be with a bow or a gun, anybody I've ever met. And every few days he'd come into the clubhouse and, hey, got something out in the truck to show you, and you go out there and there'd be a deer carcass or a turkey or something, and you just add it to his string around his neck.
Well, he wasn't bad finding a target out on the plate, over the plate either, for most of his years out of the bullpen.
Nasty sliders every time, yeah.
Exactly. So I mentioned it earlier. Whenever you talk to Steve Trachsel, you got to ask him a couple of the same questions. So if you indulge me, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
The Mark McGwire home run, the 60-second home run that you gave up. You've talked at length about it over the last few years in your career, after your career, about it. But have you ever talked to Mark since then, since your playing days were over, or after that game?
I never have, actually. And it was funny because I live in San Diego, and he was the hitting coach for a number of years down here. You know, I would go to 10 to 12 games a year with my kids and stuff, and just never ran into him, and never came up. So, you know, it came quite a bit back. I guess ESPN did the 2-hour series, sorry, with a long gone summer. So did interviews for that a couple of years ago. Didn't know how long it was going to be till it came out. So when that got released, that brought up a lot more conversations and radio and all that. But no, I've never seen Mark since probably like a week after that home run, maybe less. Yeah. Saw him out at a bar a couple days after. Talked to him, great guy, you know, just talked about it. He signed a bat for me. And then obviously with everything that was going on with Sammy when I was with the Cubs at the time, so I got a bat from him. So I got a bat from both guys, both hit 62. And, you know, obviously when Mark came back with the positive steroid test, or not test, but came out saying that he had done some stuff, you know, it blew up again. I was actually in New York at a Mets event when that happened. So it's kind of weird how every few years it comes back.
Seems to. I mean, with that kind, I mean, everyone remembers where they were that summer if you're a baseball fan.
Yeah.
So it definitely will come and go. What's your, now that I know at the time you talked about how, because you were on a team that was in a pennant race and you were on the mound trying to get your team to win, and all the celebrations maybe didn't sit right with you at the time.
Right.
Now that you have some perspective, you said you have a signed bat of his, you know, Sammy's as well. With some perspective, how do you sort of interpret your place in history, even though it's not on the side that most people want to be on, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, obviously at the very time, you know, we were the Cubs, you know, we were finally in a playoff race. It wasn't something that we had, you know, participated in much of my career there. So my entire focus was getting a win that game, getting us into playoffs. You know, facing Mark, you know, had done it all year, done it prior years. It's always difficult. I don't remember having a whole lot of success, you know, with this because he was a guy that would chase sliders, and I didn't throw a slider, so I had to figure out other ways to try to get him out. So it was basically just, you know, try to get him off balance, stay low in the zone, make it something difficult for him to lift. And yeah, that pitch, you know, the second at bat was supposed to be down and in, wasn't quite in enough, probably not down enough, and you know, he hit that ball so hard, you know, right off the bat, we just assumed, okay, that's gonna hook foul, no big deal, it's strike one, and it didn't hook. It didn't even rise. I think it was.
Yeah, it just kind of got out of there before the camera could even switch over. It was crazy.
The shortest home run, I think it might have been definitely the shortest home run he hit that year. Might have been one of the shortest of his career. So, and it was out before he even realized it, and then it was just the celebrations going on. So at that point, just trying to stay focused. We're still early in the game. We were in the game at that point, and just try to maintain focus and stay locked in. And you know, getting to that point for me is something that was a pretty long process throughout the day to get locked in like that. So when I would lose focus, it was always difficult for me to get back in it. And, you know, like you said, talking to guys I played with, like Pedro Martinez was one of the guys who just absolutely amazed me how he could get into game focus, get out of it, and have the biggest smile and have fun and be pointing at guys. And then a snap of his fingers, he's locked right back in. And I've always amazed at how easy it was for him to do that. And that was just something I've never was able to do.
Which leads me seamlessly into the other, you know, Trachsel topic du jour. Let's call it your deliberate work pace, which you've kind of come to be known for. But I want to clear your name. I want to exonerate you because it actually isn't as bad as people kind of give you the rap for or remember. But for a while there, it was something that, you pitched very slowly, especially between pitches, especially with runners on base.
Yeah, on base for sure.
Yeah. When did you realize that was kind of like, that works for me? I'm not the Pedro that's going to snap like that. When did that become sort of your thing?
You know, during the time it was happening, it never felt like it was as long as it actually was. In my head, it was going a million miles a second. And it really, I think it probably started my last year in Chicago. That's where it started. I don't know why. It just was something that was completely subconscious, never realized it. And when I got to New York, we really started to pay attention to it. I remember it was spring when Charlie Huff was still a pitching coach there. We actually we had him do a stopwatch, and I'd come in between innings and come in, and we'd sit down and go through it. During spring training when you're able to not really have to pay attention to getting guys out, and really made a conscious effort to speed up. And we did speed up. Still wasn't to the level of where we always wanted to try to get to, but it was something that became conscious. And the real hard part was when I got done playing, my dad brought over all these tapes that he had made, over the years. And I was in the process of moving them over to DVDs and such. That's when I really looked at it. It was like, oh my God, this was really bad. This was even worse than I ever even imagined, because I do these DVDs and I would start to watch a few of them. And some of the bad games, I'd have to just leave the room for a couple, just like, no, I'm just going to assume this is going to tape right, because I couldn't even watch it. It was so bad. So it was definitely worse than I ever expected. But nowadays, it's pretty quick. Some of these games now are typical games, 3.5, 3:45.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Your average game time in your career was 3 hours, 2 minutes, which back then seemed like an eternity to people.
Really fast now.
This year, the average game time across all of baseball is 3 hours, 6 minutes. So you would actually be working quick today compared to the way the game has gotten a little bit.
And there was a reporter named Marty Noble who would actually come in. It was probably my third, fourth year. And he's like, hey, why are you getting this bad rap? I'm like, I don't know, because I work slow, whatever. And he goes, here, look at these numbers from last year. Kevin Apier and Al Leiter's games were 3 hours and 5 minutes and 3 hours and 8 minutes. And you were at 3:02. I'm like, yeah, but I got a lot more men on base than those.
Yeah, I guess if you're taking that time, but you're throwing shutouts, that's one thing. Versus if you got the carousel.
And no one cares then. That's right. If you're winning games, everything's okay. But it's when you start to struggle, then like, hey, we got to figure out something here to make you better.
But hey, on our behalf, here's the campaign to clear Steve's name. He wasn't pitching that slowly. Just the memory maybe is a little bit.
Human rain delay now. It's obviously just kind of a moniker. There's a few guys out there I've seen with it. I actually had a beer released a few weeks ago called the Human Rain Delay. So I know a lot of the Mets fantasy camp guys were excited about it. So it's just something that we've kind of made and embraced, have fun with, and there's worse things you could be known for. That's for sure.
Tell me about it. And I love the fact that you have kind of embraced it now. You've made it a positive thing. And the thing I love about your beer is that it's called the Human Rain Delay. So you actually worked with a brewer out there, and you're in Southern California, San Diego. Yep. I used to live there for a bit. I know what the beer culture is like down there. So to get one made of your own, pretty sweet. But also, it took like 3 years to make the beer, right? Fitting to the name and your pitching style. Correct. It took a long time.
So it was a 3-year process, 3 different batches. And of course, being originally more of a wine guy, we aged the beer in neutral wine barrels. So we kind of did all the little things I'm interested in to kind of combine it all together. And we blended those 3 years together. And then, it literally just came out, 3.5 weeks ago.
And like any time you pitched well, it was worth the wait, right? Same thing
with the
wait. Beer now.
The beer came out great. We submitted it to Great American Beer Festival. We're hoping to win a medal with it. We advanced to, would be the final table, but got a lot of great replies from all the judges. Just came up short on the medal.
As happens sometimes, but congrats on that too. I want to ask you about the wine thing, but one last question on your pace of pitching back in the day. Did any guys playing behind you on the Mets ever say anything? Did anybody ever get like a little chafed, or they didn't really care? How did your defense take that?
Definitely, guys, we would talk about it, especially when I was trying to make it better, because, Robbie Alomar was a big, proponent of helping me work faster. I do know I had some guys in Chicago that were, when it first started, that were very unhappy with it. And when I was in Tampa in 2000, I was having issues there too. And that was more of the bullpen guys. I would have them. You could do that in Tampa because there weren't very many fans. You could hear the guys in the bullpen saying stuff sometimes. And but I would actually have them, yell out to me when they would notice that things were going slowly. And didn't always work. And but it was just something that became conscious and was always trying to get better at. And is what it is now. Is what it is. Great way to put it. Yeah. Want to talk some wine? It's always a good time to talk some wine, right? I can talk wine anytime, all day long.
I love that. Now, I'm trying to, get my expertise level up on it too. So I'm hoping you can give me and all of us some tips, because you've been into it and just to give people some perspective, you built your own wine cellar in the house that you're living in now, right? Give us a number. How many bottles you got in your cellar right now?
Oh my gosh. The cellar was built and designed to hold about 2,000. I've squeezed probably 3,100 into it now.
That's insane.
So my grandkids will be drinking the wine that I definitely won't be getting to. It's basically
So that's my question.
Insane.
When you've got 3,000 plus bottles of wine in your house, like there's no way you expect to drink even half of those in your life? Are you just collecting them like art?
Two-thirds, hopefully. Got my fingers crossed. My wife gives me a hard time because there's wine on the floors. You got to climb over boxes to find stuff. But I'm pretty OCD about it. I would wager a bet I know where 90% of every bottle is. So if I get a phone call, my wife goes, "Hey, what can I open?" I got to go inside, go down 3 rows, 5th bottle on the top. You can have that one. And she's like, "How do you know this?" I'm like, "And I don't know. I just do."
That's a labor of love. I can't even imagine what that many bottles of wine looks like, and you've got the schematics and the blueprint in your head.
Yeah, there's boxes on top of boxes, and there's boxes on top of the racks of stuff I know I won't even get to for 10 years because they're just aging. And it's definitely a passion. It's something I love. I've taken my first sommelier's exam right after I retired, so I've got that. I've looked into expanding that, but just now with COVID, and luckily everything's on the computer, so you don't have to go to take classes anymore. You can do it all online.
So how did that all get started? Because it's kind of in vogue now. I think a lot of athletes have gotten into it in the last 5-10 years, but you've been doing this since
there's a lot of athletes there's a lot of guys that got wineries now. Dave Roberts and Rich Aurelia have a great winery called Bread Stitch up in Napa. It's something I've thought about in the past, just never wanted to do, but it really just came out of I got sick of beer. And I really got into how wine would pair with food. So being in New York, I mean, the restaurants are just amazing. So some of the best cuisine on the planet. So I got introduced to that, and then that led to how wine works. But with Bobby Valentine, we put on a tournament my first year, and I got introduced to a gentleman named Bill Ippolito, who went to high school. He was on Bobby's baseball teams. He was a catcher. And he was in the wine business, so we played in this golf tournament together. Bobby set us up on purpose. I didn't know at the time. And he really introduced me to a lot of amazing things. I give him a hard time because some of the wines he introduced me to were at such a level that you can't even get them now. So he started this wine cellar, and it's like, okay, now you got me hooked on things that are almost impossible to get or just extremely expensive to get. So I gave him a hard time with that, but it just turned into a huge passion.
So Bobby V, always up to something. Bobby Vino, I guess, in this case, right? That could be his little street name.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
So who had, because you spent time on, the team planes and everything, sharing wine with the guys, using it to talk with the Mike Piazzas, the Tom Glavids, who had the best palate on the Mets for wine?
I would have to go with Mike. He had a huge love and education with a lot of the Italian wines. And so he would bring them on every once in a while, or he'd come in clubhouse one day in the morning and be like, "Dude, look what I had last night." We'd go and we'd talk about it. And, he'd be more like a bragging rights. He'd do a couple team dinners down in Florida, where we would talk about which wines we should serve at those dinners and stuff. So I think that was one of the when he set the home run record for catcher. And that was the team gift was a giant magnum of wine that I helped pick out with Todd Zeal and Robin Ventura. So again, all these different ways that wine helps bring you together, whether it be food at the table. Jeff Wilpon would always do the team dinners. We just had credit card out to Outlier and say, "Okay, take all the pictures out. Just don't go crazy on the wine. Don't let Trachsel run up the bill."
Yeah, they can't trust you with the wine menu because who knows where that might end up, right?
It could get bad. Especially when you didn't care, you didn't have to pick up the tab. It's just like, okay, we're going to some big dollar stuff now.
That's usually how it works for most of us, right? Well, that leads me.
And then the privileges get revoked.
Well, yeah, exactly right. You got to be careful. You want to enjoy it, but not go too far that then you never get to enjoy it again.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me, Steve. I like to wrap up these chats with some quick hitters, and I want to play a little game of Trachsel, true or false. I'm going to ask you a few true or false questions. You give us the real deal. So you talked about how you used to bring your own wine on the planes for the Mets, and I get that because maybe the airplane wine's not the best selection, but you also, true or false, brought your own wine glasses on the planes.
True. Very true.
Is it that big of a deal than the glasses they would give you on board? Is it that different?
Yeah, well, a lot of times there were little small ones, so I tried to bring the biggest ones I could. Like I had the case; it would actually have a corkscrew in it. So there was some time I was leaving corkscrews all over the country because they were getting confiscated. So
I was going to ask, the TSA and airport security can't be that thrilled about you trying to BYO corkscrew on a flight, I would imagine.
Many arguments with TSA about corkscrews that were supposedly okay to bring. They had their own ideas.
Yeah, well, listen to them because they're the ones that are in charge when you're traveling.
Right.
Next one, true or false? Joe Mcewing is the nicest Met you ever played with.
Oh my gosh. I'd have to put a true, but he's probably tied with a dozen other guys.
Okay, because the reason I brought that up is I remember you did an interview once where they asked you who were the nicest teammates you remember, and there were a few Mets that you listed in there. I remember Robin Ventura you said was one of them, but Joe Mcewing was the first one you mentioned, so I just wanted to see if maybe he was on a pedestal above.
He's super Joe for a number of reasons. He's super on a whole bunch of levels. Absolutely.
That's nice. Well, warms my heart. I hear a dog trying to jump in the interview there. You got a little friend that wants to come on the camera?
I know. Yeah. My harmless dog with the loud bark just decided she's going to start barking.
That's great. We'll let you get back to her in a sec because I got the last one for you. True or false, Steve? Al Leiter is responsible for you getting your first ever bobblehead.
Absolutely true.
I love it. Tell me that story.
I think he probably just got sick of me complaining about the fact that I didn't have a bobblehead after all these years. So, yeah, I don't know who he talked to or who he went through to make it happen, but yeah, he was definitely the main impetus behind getting it done. So my understanding is it's the most limited bobblehead in Mets history. So there's a couple guys in Mets fantasy camp who ask me every year to bring one to them, and I haven't done it yet because I know how valuable it is to them. So we do some fundraising down there sometimes. So one of these days, hopefully this year, if we're able to get together, I'll bring one down, and we basically auction it off to between the guys that are the biggest collectors, and then all the money goes to charity.
There you go. From 2004, for a guy who knows his exclusive wines, now you can have the very limited edition Steve Trachsel bobblehead. What a vintage from 04, the Trachsel Bobble. I love it. Steve, thanks so much for taking the time. You got so much going on. Congratulations again on everything you got going. The new baby coming, the new beer that's out, and thank you for taking the time. It means a lot to us.
No, it's a lot of fun, man. Hopefully we'll get back to normal here. Can't wait to go sit in the stands at a baseball game and have a nice cold beer and a hot dog.
Can't wait to see you there. For Steve Trachsel, I'm Mike Janela. Thanks for hanging out. See you next time.
Thank you. All right, Mike. Thanks, guys.